Eververse. That has been another burning topic. I guess it all stems from really Asdacross's video. He made a video that just caught a lot of steam, and I mean, it's like he didn't really say anything. Definitely a few points which were very interesting, but he didn't say anything that we didn't already know. But he just things that had slowly built up over time that we didn't really notice. He just collected them all into one thing and being like, "This is the state of how Eververse is." And obviously, a lot of people have disagreed with a lot of what he said. A lot of people agree with a lot of what he said. It's been very controversial, which is obviously what helped it be spread so much, because a lot of people have different takes on it. But he definitely raised a lot of good points about this. It's like the slowly boiling lobster analogy of that's. It's been like like 7 years since Eververse came, and Taken King, maybe even more. But we've just seen, and Destiny's such a weird game, such a weird. Just things that you can buy and armors. It's a very, very weird, unique game. So when they introduce things that you can sell, it's kind of like, how do I feel about this? Being able to like buy ranks here, or being able to buy the deep sight things, or being able to like have these little shortcuts, or buying a cool armor set versus an ornament, and then there's a price. It's such a like knowing there's so many different forms of microtransactions in Destiny, and there's no game like Destiny. You can't compare it to another game and really know, like, how do I feel about this? Is this pay to win, or is this too expensive, or is this because, yeah, like I said, you can't compare it to another game to know like what's fair and what isn't. And there's so many different forms and different versions of these microtransactions. It's tough to know, like, okay, what's really going on here? But yeah, that's been a big topic of discussion recently.
Yeah, I think that a lot of the points that Cross raises in his video act as kind of like an alarm bell, and rightly so. I agree with a lot of what Cross actually has to say in that.
Yeah, me too.
And kudos to him and the team for putting it together. There's some which I don't think I agree with, but even so, whilst I agree with a lot of the take, I think where I stand is this, right? Personally, I don't think it affects me that much. Right? Like, as someone who's bolted on and will buy all of the major content things and will dip into the Eververse to get the things that I want that look cool, I've certainly spent my Eververse money, and I'm certainly, if you want to look at it that way, a part of the problem. It personally does not worry me. However, it's one of those things where it does very much worry people like Cross, and it does very much worry people who don't immediately have the ability to purchase those expansions. Needless to say, every time I buy one of these things, it's going to end up being something I have to buy for my job, so it's a very different kind of purchase than someone who's doing this for leisure.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, it comes down to this. My opinion does not matter, and I hate to say this bit, so hear me out before I say it, Cross's opinion and the opinion of those people who are not buying this as a job and not something that supports them along the way, their opinions technically don't matter as much as mine either. Like,
I don't think many of our things really matter, to be honest.
The big thing that does is the overall consensus in the form of money being spent.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Cross raised this exact point in the video. Not only that if you want to go ahead and see practices change, vote with your wallet, but also that gamers are routinely terrible at that.
Yeah.
That we have very little discipline when it comes to things like that, Like, we have seen how the bar has slowly shifted, and how, whilst a $60 game has remained relatively consistently to $60, or more recently in times $70, but now people are okay with the idea of buying a $10 video game skin. And how in some instances, because you're buying it across 3 classes in the Eververse store, and some of these things are $20, you can buy some of them for 2,000 silver or something like that, you're suddenly looking at this case of like, okay, these 3 skins now, even if they are cool, need to represent the value of me buying a $60 game. And that's a very hard square to circle, and it's one of those moments at which, as long as gamers continue to accept it, Bungie will continue to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
This is very much the they are a company moment.
Mm-hmm.
That's not an excuse, it's an explanation, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's the thing of, we live in this kind of society, and until the rules of that generally change, there's not going to be any sort of immediate change to this. Honestly, Eververse is going to continue to be a thorn in the side of things. I would love if Bungie, and I'm call me 99% sure that it's not going to happen, and this is one of those things where it's just like, anyone who's in the situation where Bungie is, I don't think would make any decision other than this. I think Bungie will remain with what its model is. I would love if they toned down all the microtransactions and made things a lot more respectful. I would love if they had a sort of, I'd love if they had this really sort of positive community that was consistently celebrating the sort of like value they got out of the game and the joy that they found of it. The constant comparison is Final Fantasy XIV, you know? Okay. They literally have the copy pasta talking about how their players are evangelists for their game. You know, have you heard of the critically acclaimed MMO, whatever, you know the copy pasta at this point. The overall thing for it, though, is that community is way less monetized than Destiny's is, and it's a roaring success every time, and I've never heard anyone say a bad thing about this current version of Final Fantasy, where it's before they had the thing where they basically rebuilt the entire game. Like, Destiny is not that. It flows on this chaotic ebb of constant praise that rises and criticism that lowers. And a lot of that is due to the fact that the players, this term may seem reductive, but they are nickeled and dimed for a lot of the cosmetic stuff. But yeah. Also, Cross makes a very good point there to the idea of this is just cosmetic. When cosmetic things are a main part of the content, it becomes less of a thing of, oh, cosmetics aren't a problem, and it becomes a thing of, no, this is the problem. The events in particular are the thing that I think stood out to me in that, where events have now sort of morphed into this thing of you have the opportunity to spend money on these things for the most part, and the rest of it is maybe available, some of it, I say some of it, most of it, as bright dust items in the store over these 3 weeks. And by the way, there is a gameplay component tacked in here. It really does not feel like the main effect of it.
But also the limited time thing is a huge factor in that kind of incentivizes you to, oh, I better get this now because this, limited time thing.
Yeah, I hate what they've... I'm just going to be honest. I'm so sorry about it, but I hate what they've done with events.
Yeah,
I'm glad...
Very little interest in them. Very little. And they're the same ones. You got the Solstice, you got the Festival, you got the Dawning, and it's just very Guardian games, and they're just so... Like, players like us, we've been playing them for... some of them are around for 5, 6, 7 years. They're just very... the Dawning for the however many time doesn't... Or it's like, oh, yeah, the Dawning. But, I mean, there's a couple good pieces of loot, but, yeah, they're very much, just vehicles for microtransactions.
That's it at that point, And I'd be okay if there was some actual other gameplay-centric activities to it that we could do. Like, if there was more focus on, like, hey... do these things to get the activity, but a lot of the time it's not necessarily that. Like the core advertised bits of loot and the things that are absolutely the biggest drawer of whatever the event is, it's sort of thrown there up in the front, and they are the microtransaction heavy cosmetics, and it's just, it's not completely fair to sit there and say that's all everything events are. Like, sure, the achievements will give you materials and useful bits and pieces for your Destiny career. Yeah. It's a decent time to farm auxiliary stuff, but having one weapon added in each different iteration of a seasonal event and seeing the activities not necessarily change in any meaningful manner, not seeing fresh content added to these events is really what hinders this. Fresh content, it's always been what the community's wanted. Microtransactions are not fresh content. A new weapon does not count as fresh content anymore. People are not willing to put up with the idea of, hey, the big hype for Guardian games this season is Taraxipose, the first Strand Scout rifle. Sure, you can get some fun rolls on that, and sure, it'll be a hype weapon for a little bit. That's an entire event around one gun, basically. Joy to those people who got the title as well from last year, And
how many guns are there in Destiny 2?
Literally well over 2,000.
So it's like, at this point, it's like, I don't know, a scout rifle or a fusion rifle. It's like, it's not, it feels 2014 where it's like a new thing is like, oh, that's interesting. But at this point, it's like, there's so many weapons. It's almost hard to tell. There's so many exotics and good ones too. It's not really too much of Bungie's fault because when you've had a game going for so long, there's so much loot. There's tough competition. But as far as the vote with your wallet thing is interesting, but I think what a lot of people don't realize is that it goes both ways. The whole vote with your wallet. There are people who will vote with their wallet as in trying to essentially boycott something and not want to give their money. But then there are also people voting with their wallet that are
actually
what would be
buying.
classed as whales that are spending lots of money, they're also voting with their wallet. So it's like, yeah, you can vote with your wallet and abstain or try and boycott something, but you're going against people also voting with their wallet. Unfortunately, the amount of people that vote with their wallet generously is far, far, far greater than the people who it's again, like, it's kind of like the, just using example numbers, but like the 10% of the vocal and hardcore community that would be on Reddit and Twitter and voting with their wallet. So yeah, you might like do a very good job voting and not giving your money against something you don't agree with, which is obviously fair enough. Everyone's entitled to their opinion. However, you're outweighed by the 90% of people who are just casual players. They hop on like, yeah, I'll chuck $20 for a skin, or yeah, I'll just like buy this, and they just don't really pay attention. So voting with your wallet goes both ways, and there are people that it's a very tough battle against the majority who aren't as careful with how they spend their money. And again, they're not wrong either. However you want to spend your money, if you want to just buy a bunch of skins, if you want to spend thousands on Destiny or any game, CS:GO skins or you name it, voting with your wallet is a lot bigger than just the people kind of boycotting, I think.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say it unfortunately applies to the whole field, because whilst buying a skin may be a thing, it's one of those things where definitely playing into it has caused a less respectful view of what the consumer will accept. It is definitely about putting boundaries. And I say this as someone who's dived into the Eververse, like I most definitely have quite a few Eververse items on my account. And like, hey, they're great stuff. And in some instances, Bungie has made the point of like, this helps. This used to be the thing they talked about ages ago. They used to say like, hey, this helps us to fund the content that we create.
Yeah,
like
the
exotic
missions.
Then funded the Outbreak Prime or Outbreak Perfected mission. It's like, okay, if that's the way that we're going with this, I can still sort of accept it. But it's now so many things. It's like, where does this end, and what does this give us? And it's not even just a slippery slope. It's very obfuscated. Like, you no longer see the direct correlation of what your money has really gotten you or what the thing is, right? Like, and I think this is the big differentiator between them and someone like Digital Extremes, who they do Warframe. It's been a while since I've dived into that community, but the consistent relationship between the developers and the free-to-play / paid players is that their game is entirely free-to-play. You can get everything, even stuff which allows you to earn their premium currency of platinum, because you can farm items and then sell it for platinum. In that sense, the economy is kept very consistent.